The blue glow of computer screens lit up Commander Jack Miller's face as he studied the latest report. Another ordinary day at the International Space Command, until it wasn't. "Sir, you need to see this." Lieutenant Adams burst into his office, face pale. Something just appeared in orbit. Jack followed Adams to the main control room where chaos had erupted. On the massive central display, a vessel unlike anything humans had built hovered above Earth. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly metal that seemed to bend light around it. "How long has it been there?" Jack asked, his voice steady despite the hammering in his chest. "That's the thing, sir. It just appeared. No approach trajectory. 1 second nothing, the next second, that." The room fell silent as a transmission cut through their communication system. The screens flickered, and then an image appeared. The being on screen was tall with a body covered in smooth, pale blue plates that resembled armor. 4 black eyes arranged in a diamond pattern studied them with unsettling intelligence. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in perfect English, its mouth moving strangely around the words. "I am High Commander Vex of the Galatian Collective. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations with your world." Within hours, world leaders assembled in an emergency session. Jack, with his background in both xenobiology and diplomacy, was quickly appointed to lead the first contact team. As he prepared for the meeting, a second transmission arrived with an unexpected request. "Before formal relations can begin," High Commander Vex explained, "our traditions require a physical inspection by a representative of your species. This is a sacred ritual among our people. Human, you must inspect me." The request left officials baffled. Intelligence analysts worked through the night trying to understand the cultural significance. Was it a trap? A test? No one knew. The next morning, Jack stood on the landing pad beside a small shuttle sent by the Galatians. 5 other specialists waited with him, but the aliens had been clear. Only 1 human would be permitted aboard for the initial inspection. "We'll maintain constant communication," General Rivera assured him, adjusting Jack's specialized suit. "At the first sign of trouble, we'll—" "There won't be trouble," Jack said with more confidence than he felt. "They could have attacked without warning if that was their intention. They want something else." The shuttle ride was smoother than any Earth vehicle Jack had experienced. Through the viewport, he watched his planet shrink while the massive Galatian ship grew larger. The alien craft dwarfed the International Space Station, stretching nearly a mile from end to end. "Commander Miller," came a voice through his communicator. "I am Lux, First Aide to High Commander Vex. I will guide you aboard our vessel." Jack stepped from the shuttle into a circular chamber with walls that shifted colors like oil on water. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and ozone. Lux stood waiting. Shorter than Vex had appeared in the transmission, but still towering over Jack by at least 2 feet. Close up, Jack could see that what he had thought was armor was actually their natural skin. Overlapping plates that moved fluidly with each motion. "Our species has never made contact with beings like yours," Lux said, leading Jack through corridors where other Galatians stopped to stare. "The High Commander believes your world holds great promise." "Why me?" Jack asked. "Why humans for this inspection ritual?" Lux's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "That is not for me to explain. The High Commander will answer your questions." They entered a vast chamber where a dozen Galatians stood in formation. At the center was Vex, even more impressive in person than in the transmission. The High Commander's plates had intricate patterns etched into them, glowing faintly with an internal light. "Commander Miller," Vex's voice resonated through the chamber. "You are the first human to set foot on a Galatian vessel, a historic moment for both our peoples." Jack bowed slightly, remembering his diplomatic training. "The honor is mine, High Commander." Vex stepped forward, towering over Jack. The alien leader's 4 eyes studied him intently before speaking words that would change the course of human history. "Human, you must inspect me." The future of both our worlds depends on what you find. Jack's throat felt dry as the meaning of Vex's words sank in. The alien leader wanted a physical inspection, here and now, with a dozen Galatian officials watching. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking for, Jack said carefully. His training had covered many first contact scenarios, but nothing like this. Vex made a flowing gesture with his upper arms, while his lower ones remained still. Among our people, trust begins with vulnerability. I must be examined by one who has no stake in our internal politics. You, as an outsider with knowledge of biology, are ideal. One of the other Galatians stepped forward. This one was smaller, with plates of a deeper blue color. I am Chief Medical Observer Trill. I will assist in explaining our anatomy, but you must conduct the inspection with your own senses. Jack glanced at the communication device on his wrist, knowing his team back on Earth was listening to every word. He took a deep breath and nodded. I'll do my best. Vex moved to the center of the room where a raised platform emerged from the floor. The other Galatians formed a circle around it, their posture rigid and formal. This is the inspection ring, Trill explained. Once you enter, the ritual begins and cannot be interrupted. As Jack stepped onto the platform, lights dimmed around the chamber's edges while brightening directly above them. Vex stood perfectly still, towering over Jack. Up close, the alien leader's skin plates looked even more intricate, with patterns that seemed to shift subtly under the light. How should I proceed? Jack asked, trying to keep his voice steady. First, observe with your eyes, Trill instructed from just outside the ring. Then you may request the High Commander to reveal specific areas for closer inspection. Jack walked slowly around Vex, noting the arrangement of the plates, how they overlapped at joints, the subtle differences in coloration. He remembered his xenobiology training. Look for asymmetry, unusual colorations, anything that might indicate health issues. May I see beneath the neck plates? Jack asked after completing his first circuit. Without a word, Vex touched a spot near his collarbone. With a soft clicking sound, several plates shifted, revealing a section of softer tissue beneath. The exposed area pulsed with a faint bluish glow. This is our primary circulation node, Trill explained. Similar to your heart, but distributed through 5 connected chambers. Jack leaned closer, noticing how the tissue rhythmically expanded and contracted. The pattern seemed regular, but something caught his attention. A slight discoloration near one of the edges. What's this darker area here? He asked, pointing but not touching. A murmur rippled through the watching Galatians. Trill moved closer to the edge of the ring, all 4 eyes widening. There should be no discoloration there, Trill said, voice suddenly tense. Jack studied the area more carefully. It appears to be spreading from behind this secondary plate. Can you open that section as well? Vex touched another spot, and more plates shifted aside. What Jack saw made him step back in surprise. Nestled against the alien circulation tissue was something that clearly didn't belong. A small dark mass with tiny filaments extending into the surrounding tissue. High Commander, Jack said carefully, there's something here that appears to be a separate organism. Based on how it's positioned and connected to your circulation system, it could be parasitic in nature. The chamber erupted in a flurry of Galatian speech, too rapid for Jack's translator to process. Vex remained perfectly still, only the slight brightening of the patterns on his skin plates revealing any reaction. Show me, Vex commanded when the others quieted. Jack pointed to the small mass. This doesn't appear to be part of your natural biology. The way it's connected suggests it might be drawing nutrients from your system, possibly affecting nearby tissues. Trill spoke urgently to another Galatian who quickly left the chamber. When they turned back to Jack, all 4 eyes focused intensely on him. Human, you have found what our own examiners missed for cycles, Trill said. The High Commander has been compromised by something we cannot detect with our senses. Vex's voice remained calm despite the revelation. It seems the legends were true. We needed outside eyes to see what hides in plain sight. Jack looked from Vex to the watching Galatians, suddenly understanding why he had been brought here. This isn't just a ritual, is it? You suspected something was wrong but couldn't confirm it yourselves. The inspection is both ritual and necessity, Vex acknowledged. And you, Commander Miller, have just changed the course of Galatian history. The chamber had fallen into an eerie silence. Jack felt the weight of every Galatian eye focused on him. The discovery of the parasite had clearly shaken them to their core. How long have you suspected something was wrong? Jack asked, his gaze moving between Vex and Trill. Trill stepped closer to the inspection ring. The High Commander began making decisions that seemed out of character 3 cycles ago. At first, the Council assumed it was simply a shift in policy. But when he began pushing for aggressive expansion into territories we had previously agreed to leave neutral, many grew concerned. Vex's plates shifted slightly in what Jack was beginning to recognize as discomfort. I have experienced moments of disconnection, times when my actions did not feel entirely my own. But our medical observers found nothing wrong. Jack considered this new information carefully. This organism appears to be positioned near what might be neural tissue. Is that correct? Yes, Trill confirmed. That is our secondary nervous cluster, which influences higher decision-making and long-term planning. A cold realization washed over Jack. Then it's possible this parasite has been influencing your thoughts, High Commander. Possibly for years. The Galatian who had left earlier returned with what appeared to be a scanning device. Unlike human medical equipment, this was sleek and seemingly composed of the same shifting material as the ship itself. The device was handed to Trill, who activated it with a touch. I will scan the area you indicated, Trill explained, holding the device near but not entering the inspection ring. But I must warn you, we have performed hundreds of scans and found nothing. Jack watched as beams of soft light passed over Vex's exposed area. A 3-dimensional image formed above the device, showing the internal structures in stunning detail. Yet on the display, there was no sign of the dark mass Jack had plainly seen with his own eyes. It's not there, Jack said, confused. But I can clearly see it. Show me exactly where again, Trill requested. Jack pointed directly at the parasite. Right here. It's approximately 2 centimeters across with filaments extending outward. Vex spoke, his voice contemplative. Our ancient texts speak of a time when our species faced an invisible enemy. An enemy that only those with foreign sight could detect. The parasite must have evolved to be completely undetectable to Galatian senses and technology. Jack theorized. A perfect evolutionary adaptation, invisible to its host species. One of the older Galatians stepped forward. His plates were faded, showing signs of age. I am Elder Kren. This explains much about the changes we have observed across our territories. If the High Commander has been compromised, then others might be as well. Jack finished the thought. Possibly many others in positions of power. The revelation sent another wave of murmurs through the gathered aliens. Jack could sense their growing alarm. Can you remove it? Vex asked directly, his 4 eyes fixed on Jack. Jack hesitated. I'm not a surgeon, and I have limited knowledge of your physiology. Attempting to remove it without proper preparation could be dangerous. Trill moved to a wall panel and pressed a sequence of symbols. We are summoning our medical team. They will work with you to develop a procedure. Me? Jack asked, surprised. Surely your doctors are better equipped. Our doctors cannot see what threatens us, Vex interrupted. You can. That makes you essential, Commander Miller. Jack felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was no longer just a diplomat, but potentially the key to saving an entire alien civilization from an invisible threat. I'll need to contact Earth, he said. We have specialists in parasitology who might be able to help, and I'll need more information about Galatian physiology. Vex nodded. Whatever resources you require will be provided. There's something I don't understand, Jack said, looking up at the towering alien leader. Why did you come to Earth specifically? How did you know humans would be able to see what you couldn't? Elder Kren stepped closer, his movements slow but deliberate. There is an ancient prophecy among our people. It speaks of a time when our civilization would face its greatest threat, an enemy hiding within. And it foretold that salvation would come from a younger species, one whose eyes were not yet blinded by advancement. Jack thought about humanity, still new to space travel, still struggling with their own planetary problems. And you believe we're that species? The prophecy described them as beings who still remember illness, who understand the concept of medicine. Vex explained, "Our species evolved beyond sickness so long ago that we lost the knowledge of healing. We have forgotten what you still remember." Jack looked again at the parasite, so obvious to his human eyes, yet completely invisible to the advanced aliens. Sometimes, he realized, progress could create its own form of blindness. "I'll do everything I can to help," he promised. "Let's get started." The Galatian medical chamber was unlike any hospital Jack had ever seen. Instead of beds, there were hovering platforms. Instead of monitors, three-dimensional projections floated in the air. A team of 6 Galatian medical specialists moved around the room, preparing for what would be the first-ever surgery performed on their high commander. "Our problem is fundamental," Trill explained as they examined Vex's scans. "We cannot see the parasite, so we cannot remove it." Jack studied the images that showed Vex's internal systems in stunning detail, but with no sign of the parasite he could see plainly with his naked eyes. He tapped his communication device. "Earth Control, are you receiving these scans?" "We're getting them, Commander," came the voice of Dr. Bennett, Earth's leading xenobiologist. "Fascinating biology, but I don't see any parasite. That's the problem. It's invisible to both human technology and Galatian senses. I can only see it directly with my eyes." There was a pause before Dr. Bennett responded. "If it's invisible to our technology, but visible to the human eye, we need to think outside conventional methods." "What about marking it physically?" Jack looked up. "That's it. We can mark its boundaries directly." He turned to Trill. "Do you have something I could use to mark tissue? Something safe but visible to your scanners?" Trill consulted with the medical team before producing a small container of blue gel. "This is used to trace neural pathways during examinations. It will not harm living tissue." Jack took a thin applicator and approached Vex, who was now lying on one of the floating platforms. The High Commander's chest plates were open, revealing the area where the parasite nestled against vital systems. "I'm going to trace the outline of the parasite and its filaments," Jack explained. "Then your team will be able to see what they're dealing with." With steady hands, Jack carefully applied the blue gel along the edges of the dark mass and each of its extending tendrils. The gel shimmered slightly where it touched the parasite, confirming Jack's suspicion that the organism was reactive to its environment. "There," he said, stepping back. "Now look at your scans." The Galatian medical team gathered around their display. Where before there had been nothing unusual, now there was a clear blue outline showing a spider-like shape with tendrils reaching into several critical systems. "Extraordinary," breathed one of the medical officers. "It's connected to the secondary nerve cluster, the hormone regulation center, and the memory core." "Strategic locations," Jack noted. "Places that would allow it to influence decision-making, emotional responses, and possibly even alter memories." Vex, still conscious during this procedure, spoke calmly despite the revelation. "How many of our people might be affected?" It was a chilling question. If the High Commander could be infected without anyone noticing, how far had this parasite spread throughout Galatian society? "We need to understand what we're dealing with before we attempt removal," Jack said. "I'd like to take a sample if possible." The lead Galatian medical officer, named Orn, approached with a collection device. "Guide my hand, human. Show me where to extract the sample." Jack directed Orn to a small section of the parasite that appeared less connected to Vex's vital systems. With careful precision, Orn extracted a tiny portion of the dark mass. "Place it in a containment field immediately," Jack advised. "We don't know how it might react." The sample was secured in a floating energy field where it could be studied safely. Jack leaned in close, observing how the fragment pulsed slightly. "It's still active, even separated from the host," he noted. "And look, it's trying to become transparent again." The blue markings Jack had applied were indeed fading as the organism adapted. "Remarkable adaptation," Dr. Bennett commented through the communication link. "It must have evolved specifically to parasitize Galatian physiology while remaining undetectable." Jack turned to Vex. "High Commander, I believe we can safely remove this organism, but we need to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more likely it will adapt to our detection method." "Proceed," Vex commanded. "But first, there is something you should know. Our intelligence suggests that over the past decade, I have made contact with at least 300 high-ranking officials across our territories. If this parasite is contagious," the implication hung in the air. This wasn't just about saving one alien leader, it was potentially about saving an entire civilization from invisible infiltration. Jack squared his shoulders. "Then we'll develop a detection protocol that any human can perform. But first, let's focus on you, High Commander, one step at a time." The medical team moved into position as Jack prepared to guide them through a procedure none of them could have imagined performing just hours earlier. Human eyes were about to save an alien leader, and possibly an entire species. "Everyone understand their role?" Jack asked, looking around at the mixed team of Galatine medical specialists and the 3 human doctors who had joined via emergency shuttle from Earth. Dr. Patel, a neurosurgeon with experience in parasite removal, nodded as she adjusted her specialized headset. "The neural connections are our biggest concern. If we sever them incorrectly, it could cause permanent damage." The operation chamber hummed with tension. High Commander Vex lay on the central platform, his body illuminated by lights calibrated to make the parasite as visible as possible to human eyes. The blue markings Jack had applied earlier still outlined the creature, though they had faded somewhat. "Beginning anesthetic procedure," announced Orn, the lead Galatian medical officer. Unlike human surgery, there were no scalpels or traditional tools. Instead, Orn manipulated what looked like liquid light, directing it to specific points on Vex's exposed nervous system. The Galatian leader's 4 eyes slowly closed as the anesthetic took effect. "Remarkable," Dr. Patel whispered. "Their medical technology is centuries beyond ours, yet they couldn't see what was right in front of them." Jack positioned himself at the head of the table. "I'll guide your hands. Remember, follow the blue markings exactly. The parasite's actual body extends slightly beyond what we can see." Dr. Patel and her human colleagues would perform the actual extraction, with Jack identifying the parasite's boundaries and the Galatian team monitoring Vex's vital signs. It was an unprecedented collaboration. "Beginning primary incision," Dr. Patel announced, using a Galatian tool that separated tissue with minimal damage. Jack leaned forward, eyes fixed on the dark mass. "Stop there. One of the filaments extends 2 millimeters to your right. It's attached to what appears to be a memory center." Dr. Patil adjusted her approach with microscopic precision. "I see the blue marking now." Preparing to sever the connection. The operation proceeded with slow, methodical care. Each filament had to be traced to its source, then carefully detached without damaging the surrounding tissue. Some had grown so deeply integrated that they were nearly indistinguishable from Vex's own neural pathways. "This organism is incredible," Dr. Lee, a parasitologist, commented as he examined each extracted piece. "It seems to have specifically evolved to manipulate cognitive functions. The filaments connected to the decision-making centers are significantly larger." 3 hours into the procedure, they encountered their first serious complication. "His vital signs are fluctuating," warned Trill, watching the floating displays. "The parasite appears to be releasing some kind of chemical defense. It knows we're removing it," Jack realized. "Quick, We need to extract the central mass before it can cause more damage. Dr. Patel worked faster now, her movements still precise, but with new urgency. Almost there. The main body is detaching. Jack watched as she carefully lifted the dark, pulsing mass. Even separated from its host, the creature's tendrils reached out, searching for connection. Dr. Lee quickly sealed it in a containment field. Vital signs stabilizing. Trill announced with evident relief. Now for the most crucial part, Dr. Patel said, turning to Jack. We need to ensure no fragments remain. Jack leaned in, scrutinizing every millimeter of the exposed area. There, near the secondary neural cluster, a small fragment about the size of a grain of sand. Dr. Patel extracted the final piece, and the team began the process of closing and healing Vex's tissues. The Galatian medical technology made this part remarkably simple, the separated plates rejoining almost seamlessly. As they completed the procedure, Jack stepped back, suddenly aware of how physically and mentally exhausted he felt. The operation had taken nearly 5 hours. We did it, Dr. Patel said quietly. We actually performed successful surgery on an alien species. Jack nodded, watching as Trill and the other Galatians monitored their leader's recovery. But this is just the beginning. There could be thousands more infected throughout their civilization. Elder Kren, who had observed the entire procedure, approached Jack. For countless cycles, this enemy has hidden among us, influencing our leaders, changing our paths. Today, you have given us the means to reclaim our future. We'll need to train more humans in identification and removal, Jack said, and develop a screening protocol that can be implemented across your territories. Already, ships are being dispatched to bring more human medical teams to our core worlds. Kren confirmed. What you have done today will be remembered in Galatian history forever. Jack looked at the containment field holding the parasite. The creature that had nearly brought an advanced civilization to its knees was now visible to the Galatians, its outline glowing where the blue marker had been absorbed into its tissue. I wonder how long they've been manipulating your people, Jack mused, and what their ultimate goal might be. Those are questions we will answer together, said Kren. But first, we wait for our High Commander to awaken, truly himself for the first time in many cycles. As if on cue, Vex's 4 eyes began to open, clear and alert in a way they hadn't been before. The real work of healing, for both Vex and his civilization, was about to begin. High Commander Vex's 4 eyes opened slowly, focusing one by one. The medical chamber fell silent as everyone watched, waiting for the first true reaction from an uninfluenced Galatian leader in years. I feel. Vex paused, his voice softer than before. Lighter. As though a fog has lifted from my mind. Jack stepped forward. High Commander, how are you feeling? Vex raised one of his 4 arms, examining it as if seeing it for the first time. I remember everything I did under its influence, Commander Miller. Every decision, every order, but they feel as though they were made by someone else. Trill approached with a scanning device, passing it over Vex's body. All vital signs are strong. Neural activity is significantly different from previous scans, more balanced across all centers. Different how? Jack asked. For years, activity in the aggressive response centers was abnormally high, while empathy centers showed reduced function, Trill explained. Now, the pattern matches historical records from before the changes began. Vex slowly sat up, his massive frame rising from the operating platform with careful movements. The room's other Galatians immediately lowered their heads in a gesture of respect. I ordered the military occupation of the Toral system 3 cycles ago, Vex said, his voice heavy with regret. A peaceful civilization that had done nothing to provoke us. I remember feeling absolute certainty that they were planning to attack us first. Elder Kren stepped forward. Many in the council questioned that decision. High Commander, now we understand why it seems so out of character. Jack watched this exchange with growing concern. How widespread were these policy changes? Very, Vex replied grimly. Under the parasite's influence, I approved expanded military production, broke treaties with 3 neighboring species, and authorized preemptive strikes against potential rivals. Classic parasitic behavior, Dr. Lee commented from where he was studying the contained organism. It modified its host behavior to create conditions that would help it spread. Increased conflict means more diplomatic meetings between high-level officials. Perfect transmission opportunities. This confirmed Jack's worst fears. We need to examine every high-ranking Galatine who had direct contact with you, High Commander, especially military leaders and those in charge of your expansion efforts. Vex nodded, then did something unexpected. He lowered himself from the platform and, to everyone's shock, knelt before Jack, bringing their eyes to the same level. Human, Vex said solemnly, you have done what no one in our civilization could do. You have freed me from an imprisonment I did not even know I suffered. The debt we owe your species cannot be measured. Jack felt uncomfortable with such a powerful being kneeling before him. Please, High Commander, this isn't necessary. It is, Vex insisted. For too long, my people have viewed younger species as primitive and unworthy of equal standing. That arrogance blinded us to our own vulnerability. Today, that changes. The High Commander rose to his full height again and addressed everyone in the chamber. Prepare a transmission to all Galician territories. I will address our people directly about what has happened and about the humans who have saved us. As the Galicians hurried to carry out this order, Jack turned to Dr. Lee. What have you learned about the parasite? Dr. Lee pointed to the containment field where the dark mass now sat motionless. It's unlike anything in Earth's biological record. The organism appears to have a distributed nervous system, almost like a small brain. It can directly interface with Galatine neural tissue and even modify hormone production to influence emotional states. But where did it come from? Jack wondered. That's the most disturbing part, Dr. Lee said quietly. Based on its specific adaptations to Galatian biology, it must have been evolving alongside them for thousands, maybe millions of years. This isn't a random parasite. It's a highly specialized predator that targets leadership specifically. Jack considered the implications. A parasite that could control the decisions of one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, invisible to their detection, targeting their leaders. It was the perfect infiltration strategy. Vex returned, having changed from his medical garments into formal attire that highlighted his status. The patterns on his plates now glowed with renewed brightness. Commander Miller, would you stand with me during the transmission? Vex asked. The Galatian people should see the human who uncovered this threat. Jack nodded, suddenly aware that he was about to become the face of humanity to an entire interstellar civilization. As he followed Vex toward the communication chamber, he realized that the inspection that had once left him stunned had now changed everything, for both their species. What happens next? Jack asked. Next, Vex replied, we hunt every last one of these parasites down. And for that, we need humans, many more humans, to be our eyes. 6 months after the discovery of the parasite, Jack stood at the viewport of the newly constructed human Galatian embassy. Earth looked beautiful from orbit, a blue marble hanging in the darkness of space. Still hard to believe how much has changed, said Dr. Patel, joining him at the window. A year ago, we were wondering if aliens existed. Now we're saving them from mind-controlling parasites. Jack smiled. And they're saving us too, in their way. The embassy was just one small part of the exchange. Across Earth, Galatian technology was transforming human life. Clean energy systems had replaced fossil fuels in major cities. Medical advances from the Galatians had cured diseases once thought incurable. In return, humanity had provided something far more valuable to the aliens, their unique perspective. Commander Miller, they're ready for you in the Grand Chamber, announced a young lieutenant. Jack straightened his formal uniform and made his way through the gleaming corridors of the station. Galatians and humans worked side by side, a sight that still amazed him despite seeing it daily. The inspection that had once left him stunned had evolved into humanity's greatest opportunity. The grand chamber doors slid open silently. Inside, representatives from 27 Earth nations sat alongside delegates from the Galatian Collective and 3 other alien species that had been affected by the parasite. At the center stood High Commander Vex, his plates polished to a mirror shine for the occasion. "Commander Miller," Vex greeted him warmly. "Today we formalize what began with your courage 6 months ago." Jack took his place at the signing table. Before him lay the Galactic Medical Cooperation Treaty, a document that would cement humanity's role as the doctors of the stars. "The parasite situation?" Jack asked quietly. "Over 2,000 cases identified and treated," Vex replied. "Without human assistance, we would never have found them all. The strategic positions they had infiltrated." He shook his head, a gesture he had adopted from humans. "They had been guiding our civilization toward conflict for generations." The ceremony began with Earth's Secretary General addressing the gathered delegates. "Today marks not just an alliance between our worlds, but a new understanding of strength. The Galatians came to us with technology far beyond our own, yet it was our simple human senses that provided what they needed most." Jack thought back to those early days after Vex's surgery. Human medical teams had been deployed to every corner of Galatian space. Each team was paired with alien specialists, creating a new field of interspecies medicine. The parasites had been discovered in military leaders, diplomatic corps, even education ministers, always in positions to subtly influence Galatian society toward aggression and expansion. Vex stepped forward to address the chamber. "For too long, the Galatian people believed that advancement meant leaving behind our biological origins. We conquered disease, extended our lives, and thought ourselves beyond nature's reach. In our pride, we became blind to certain threats." He gestured toward Jack and the human delegation. "These humans, with their primitive medicine and their still-evolving senses, saw what we could not. They reminded us of wisdom we had forgotten." Jack was called to sign the treaty next. As he placed his signature beside Vex's mark, cameras flashed, recording the moment for both their worlds. "With this agreement," the Secretary General announced, "human medical teams will continue to serve throughout Galatian territory, while Earth will receive knowledge and technology to help us join the galactic community as equals." The formal part of the ceremony complete, Jack found himself surrounded by both humans and aliens offering congratulations. Among them was Elder Kren, now appointed as head of the new Interspecies Medical Council. "The parasite research has revealed something interesting," Kren told Jack quietly. "We believe they may be artificially engineered, biological weapons created long ago by someone who wanted to control galactic development from the shadows." Jack's eyebrows rose. "You think someone created them intentionally?" "The evidence suggests it," Kren confirmed, "which means our alliance may face greater challenges ahead. But together, we will face them with both advanced technology and simple human insight." As the celebration continued around him, Jack gazed out at the stars visible through the chamber's massive windows. Somewhere out there, the creators of the parasites might still exist, watching as their plan unraveled. But they hadn't counted on humans, a species too young to be considered a threat, yet old enough to remember what the Galatians had forgotten. "To the future," Vex said, joining Jack at the window. "To seeing what others miss," Jack replied, raising his glass in return. The inspection that had once left him stunned had become the foundation for humanity's greatest adventure, not as conquerors or subjects, but as healers to the stars.